and welcome to Tabletop 24. I'm Alan, and this is another episode of We'll Play a Game. And we take a load of games we've recently got to the table with a view of how quickly we're going to get them back to the table. With ever-growing collections, time can be precious, so we answer the question of, would play again? Today we have Unlock Heroic Adventures from Space Cowboys. In this edition, we have three different scenarios. We have the Insert Coin, the Sherlock Holmes A Thread of Murder, and Pursuit of the White Rabbit from sort of an Alice in Wonderland setting. A lot of the Unlock series, they have three of these different sort of style games in them, and they all tend to be a little bit different as you go through. So you won't see the continuation of a lot of these stories. Now, some of them have rolled over into other sets. This is my first set that I've played through. It's an escape room puzzle style adventure, which you'll be using the cards and the decks that you're presented with to solve the mystery, escape, move on, and depending upon the story, because they do play around with the stories a little bit, so you're not always feeling like you're in that escape room. Now, Alice in Wonderland, you're trying to escape Wonderland. That is the Alice in Wonderland story. So that is there. Sherlock Holmes, you are solving a murder. Insert Coin, you're fighting a boss. So they're all slightly different and all have their own sort of winning condition, if you will. Now, before we go any further, there will be spoilers as we go through. As always, I will try and avoid deep major spoilers, but they will be evident as we go through because we can't really talk about the game without it. So if you want to avoid all of that, skip to the end of the video. I'll give my final thoughts and closing on it. But without further ado, we will get into these. Now, first things first, and it's no spoiler to this because it is in the book, each one of these comes with a slight difficulty change. And it is one padlock that they use, two padlock and three padlock, with In Pursuit of the White Rabbit being the harder of them. Now, I think they do progress in difficulty. Now, Sherlock Holmes was the first one I tried, mainly because I wanted to try the Insert Coin with a different person, and so I thought I'll give the Sherlock Holmes one a go. And I did find it quite difficult, but it was a bit of a learning curve, so maybe I should have started here. One thing that's not present at the moment, and it's very sort of urgent to say this, is there isn't an iPad. Now, or an iPhone or smart device. Now, these games require the app to run, the Unlock app to run, which, as I appreciate, in this day and age, most people have got a smart device that they can run this on. It doesn't necessarily need to be a full screen one. It can be just a phone. But you've got to bear that in mind that you can't just play this straight out of the box. And I think you need to update the scenarios when you go as well. So if you've not updated it and it's a new one out, you might need an internet connection to do it as well. So it's not always perfect to get that set up. But saying that, the app interacts really well. It gives you a timer. There are certain codes and certain parts of the story that you'll need the app for, and it all tracks your score, and it will all track some of the answers to its questions that it will ask you as you go through, and some of the stories that you'll hit. And it's very well run, and like I say, it's compatible with all the other Unlock games, so they're all there for you, and you can get going straight away. With the note on time, each of these is about an hour, more or less, which is quite nice compact. And some of the longer sort of story-driven things, you can take a while. Like we've covered the Cantaloupe on the channel, and that's sort of 4 or 5 hours to sit down and play. Whereas this, it's an hour. It's quite enjoyable to just sit and play this enclosed story for an hour and not worry about having to come back to it at a later point, purely on the basis that you might forget something, or you don't pick up everything. But the fact that it is only an hour means that you can't develop a big story. So you're really having to develop that sort of close-knit, engaging. And then I think the Insert Coin one probably does it best for me. Although it's the simplest one, it's a new story, a new IP as such, and I think it just progresses you straight through the game and quite nicely. And I think it can be very nicely self-contained, whereas potentially a Sherlock Holmes story where you're trying to solve a murder, and most murders are not solved in an hour, and you kind of possibly want a bit more from that. And I think for me, they do sit nice, but you can't engage too heavily in the story, for me personally. But it's still nice that it sits in that hour because you haven't got to prepare an evening or an afternoon for it. You can just crack it out and go. So it's really nice there. And having the different themes is really nice. Now, I know that they have done, I think, other Sherlock Holmes. I don't think they've done any other Alice ones, but I think they've done another Sherlock Holmes one. So it's kind of nice that you can continue stories in that, and that you're reusing some of the IPs. I definitely know they've done a clown one in two different boxes. So whilst you're not progressing through them, there are these sort of callbacks to other bits and pieces. But the stories are so different that it's really nice. Like, yes, you could say Sherlock Holmes, Alice in Wonderland, they fit into that sort of common property, domain property, but they do it slightly differently, and obviously in Pursuit of the White Rabbit is slightly more whimsical and than Solving a Murder would be. So it's really important that they have that variety, I think. But at the same time, the fact that there is that variety means that you've got to carefully pick up these boxes. Now, I think there's several of these on the market. This will be in the first one that I picked up. But I picked this one up because it appealed on all three games. Now, haven't tried it before, I kind of some of the scenarios I was like, I don't really like one or two of these. I really want to like one of them, and I really want to try one of them, but I didn't like two or three. Whereas this was the only box that I was kind of like, actually, yeah, I like the Sherlock IP, I like Alice in Wonderland IP, and the 8-bit looks really fun. So we'll go with that one. Hence why this was my first one. But if you're not interested in those IPs or those stories that come along, then you can get a bit jarring that we're delving from this 8-bit gaming land to Alice in Wonderland into a Sherlock Holmes murder. And it is a very gritty Sherlock Holmes murder. It's the art style that's used is very sort of photorealistic. And for that, like I say, it can be a little bit jarring. But again, because it takes too long to get into a story, and I don't think they do get a really good, strong story in there, does that matter? And does it matter that they're all varied and stuff like that? And actually, my opinion on that for the next one of these that I potentially could pick up is that I'm not going to be so tied to what stories are on the box, because I think they do very well with the puzzle part of this, and I think the main mechanic in the game is combining numbers to get to other numbers that allow you to take other cards and get you to other puzzles. So I think I'd be less put off from that going to the next one. But going in that very first point, you can sometimes struggle with what you're into. Now, they have done major IPs, so they had the Star Wars set that came out recently. And yeah, if you're into Star Wars, then you might be, actually, that's perfect, because all three games were Star Wars based. They're sort of not main canon stories, so you can take a little bit more with them. But I think I wouldn't be afraid to just pick up another one now, because I think the mechanics are very sound, and I think they're actually quite nice as they go through. Like I say, they're very self-contained in their stories, so it's quite nice to pick it up. One of the big things about all of these type of games is, I mean, I'm just looking at the box now, and it says 1 to 6. I think you struggle with this type of game playing it with more than one. Now, we did a review, or we'll play again, for Detective, and that series really worked well at more than one player, and I think its mechanics were designed for more than one player. Whereas this one, I think, just benefits from solo play. Maybe, and I think that timer really counts on that, because you're not looking at 3 or 4 puzzles. It's not like you can split it up. Now, I've not played any of the Exit Room games, but as I understand, on the Exit Room games, you can hand puzzles out. There are different parts of things that you can be looking at. Whereas with this, you're pretty much, this is the puzzle you've got to solve. So it's either prone to quarterbacking, somebody's not quite getting there. It could be arguments or disagreements, and I think solo is where this is at. And again, an hour long, it really fits into that sort of solo bucket. Now, puzzles might be your thing, and for that means you might be able to play this as a couple or as a two. So I think maybe that would probably be my maximum, trying to play it with 2 people. I think going any further than that, I definitely couldn't imagine playing this with 6 people. And I think if you got to the point where you're playing at 6, you're not playing the best of this. You're probably just experiencing what's going on. And I think if you're bringing anybody newer into the sort of escape room game genre, I think they could be put off by that experience. So I think this really sings at 1. It could do 2. But I think, yeah, I don't know why that we think that it could take 6 people. I think it would really potentially struggle from that. So with all that being said, I would play these again. Now, with all this type of game, it comes with the caveat that I can't replay these ones because I know what the story is. I know what the outcome would be. Now, because I've not got strong links to the story, a year, 2 years down the line, I could probably play these again because I don't remember all of them. So there is that replayability potential there. But what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and swap this because there will be other people out there that have not played this. As you'll see in front of me, we've reset these and these are back exactly how they came out of the wrap. So it's quite nice. And yes, you've got these are the documents, and this for instance is the sort of board for the Sherlock, or there's some information for him, mainly up on his notes. So you've got these bits, but you're not destroying things. You're not having to remove cards, mark cards in any sort of way. So you can put it back together and you can pass it on. And I think actually, yeah, I'd like to swap this out. I'd like to try more of these games because I think they are really cool. But for me, I probably wouldn't go looking to buy and add to the collection. It would be a 1 in, 1 out for me. Okay? So thank you for watching along for this We'll Play Again. If you haven't done so already, please check out other videos on the channel. Give us a like and a subscribe, and we'll catch you next time. Take care.